My mother stood up, raised her glass, and smiled at the wrong daughter. To Natalie, she said, "My incredible daughter, the one who saved your father's life." 22 relatives clinked their glasses. The sound moved around that table like a wave, chair to chair, face to face, until it reached mine and just stopped. Nobody looked at me. Not once. I sat there in a navy dress that was hiding a 6-inch scar, 9 weeks old, still pink, still raised, still mine. I had a fresh hole in my body where a kidney used to be. I had $11,000 of medical debt I hadn't told a single person about. And I had a mother, 3 seats away, thanking my sister for something I did. I want to tell you how I got to that table. Because the toast wasn't the beginning of this story. It was just the moment I finally understood it. My name is Alice. I'm 31. And for most of my life, I was the daughter my family forgot to invite. My sister Natalie is 5 years older than me. She's the VP of operations at the medical supply company my father built from nothing back in 1998. She makes closer to $200,000 a year. She has the house, the husband, the 2 kids, and something I never had, my mother's undivided attention. When Natalie joined the family business, my mother actually said, out loud, in front of me, finally, someone who understands what legacy means. I had just finished a master's degree in healthcare administration. Nobody asked if I wanted to interview. So I stopped trying. By 2023, I'd quietly written myself out of the family calendar. The Christmas dinners where I somehow still got seated at the kids' table at 30 years old. The birthdays my mother forgot to send a card for. The company milestones I wasn't invited to because, and I quote, "It's really just for employees and board members." I told myself I didn't care anymore. That's the lie you tell yourself right before something forces you to care again. On July 20th, my father collapsed at his own company's 27th anniversary gala. 200 people. Black tie. Speeches about growth and family values. I wasn't there, I wasn't invited, and I found out from a LinkedIn post my sister made the next morning. It was my cousin who actually texted me the truth that night. "Your dad collapsed. They're taking him to Presbyterian. Thought you should know." I drove there in 25 minutes flat. When I walked into that ER waiting room, my mother looked up at me, and I want to be honest about what I saw on her face. Not relief. Not fear for her husband. Annoyance. Like I was interrupting something. 45 minutes later, a doctor came out and told us my father was in stage 4 kidney failure. He needed a transplant within 6 to 8 weeks, or he'd spend the rest of his life on dialysis. A living donor was the best option if they could find a match. My mother turned to my sister. "We'll do whatever it takes," she said. I wasn't included in we. I never was. But here's what nobody in that waiting room knew yet, what my mother didn't know, what my sister definitely didn't know, and what would take my entire family 9 months and a folded napkin at a dinner table to finally understand. The next morning, without telling anyone, I called the transplant coordinator myself. I got tested. Nobody knew. And a week later, a nurse would call and tell me something that was supposed to make me visible for the first time in my life. Instead, it made me a target because the moment I became the one who could save my father, my family didn't rally around me. They started managing me. The call came on a Monday. I was sitting in my car in the hospital parking garage. I remember exactly where, level 3, next to a concrete pillar somebody had spray painted a smiley face on, and the transplant coordinator's voice came through calm and clinical. Like she was reading me a weather report instead of the thing that was about to change my entire life. "Ms. Jordan, you're a compatible match. Blood type O positive. Tissue compatibility 98%. Excellent kidney function. You're an ideal donor." I sat there and cried. Not the pretty kind of crying either. The kind where relief and dread show up at exactly the same time and you can't tell which one is winning. I called my father before I called anyone else. "Dad, I got tested. I'm a match. I want to donate." His voice broke on the other end. "Alice, you don't have to." "I know. I want to." There was a long silence. And then he said the sentence that told me everything I needed to know about what was coming. "Your mother's going to have opinions." He wasn't wrong. 2 days later, my mother called a family meeting. My father, my mother, my sister, me. For chairs in a living room I grew up in but never quite felt like I belonged to. I told them I was a compatible donor. I told them I was willing. Silence. Then my mother looked at me like I'd confessed to a crime. You tested without telling us. I wanted to be sure first. My sister jumped in immediately. I was going to test this week. A lie. She hadn't scheduled anything. She never would have. My mother turned to my father, not to me, to him, like I wasn't even the one whose body was being discussed, and asked, Kenneth, what do you think? Do you want Alice to do this? If she's willing, my father said quietly. If she's a match, I don't want to wait for a cadaver donor. The list is 2 years long. My mother's jaw tightened. We could find another living donor. A friend. A colleague. Someone who isn't your daughter. I looked her straight in the eye. Why? I'm a perfect match. I'm willing. What's the problem? And she said it. Flat, cold, like she'd been saving it up for years and finally had the excuse to use it. The problem is you've never finished anything difficult in your life. I want to pause here, because if you've ever had a parent say something like that to you, something designed to sound like concern but land like a verdict, you already know there's no comeback that fixes it. You just have to sit inside it. I drove home that night in silence. But my father called me a few hours later. Alice, if you're sure, then let's do it. I trust you. 2 words that meant more to me than anything my mother had said to me in 10 years. I trust you. 3 days after that, my sister called me. Her voice had a brightness to it I didn't trust. Since you're donating, she said, I want to do something to help. I'm organizing a fundraiser. Kidney disease awareness. We raise money for research, offset Dad's medical costs. Turn this into something positive. I felt something tighten in my stomach, but I said what you say. That's nice of you. I'm thinking a charity gala. Company sponsors. I can get local news coverage. Will the fundraiser mention that I'm donating? Of course. It's all about the family coming together. I believed her mostly because I wanted to. A week later, I Googled the event listing myself. It was titled the Natalie Jordan Pierce Kidney Health Initiative. My name appeared nowhere in the description. Not once. I didn't know yet how far that erasure would go. I didn't know that my mother had already made a private visit to the hospital's transplant office, one that would get written down, word for word, in a file I wouldn't read for months. I didn't know that on the morning of my surgery, while I was being wheeled into an operating room to give my father an organ, my sister would be on the phone with a reporter, already deciding how the story would be told, and that I wouldn't be in it. I found all of that out later. Piece by piece. Document by document. On August 18th, I sat down for my final pre-op psychological evaluation. It's standard, every living donor goes through it. A hospital social worker named Amy Brennan asked me the usual questions. My support system. My motivations. My understanding of the risks. Then she asked something that made me pause longer than I meant to. Have you felt any pressure from your family to donate? No, I said. This is my choice. And do you feel seen by your family? Appreciated for this decision. I paused too long. I know I did, because I remember the silence stretching out and feeling embarrassed by it. Amy made a note. I didn't think much of it at the time. I had no idea that note would matter later, or that a few hours after I left her office, my mother would walk into that same room and say something about me that a hospital would end up documenting, word for word, in an official file. I didn't know that yet. What I did know was what was happening online. My sister's fundraiser was picking up speed. Local news coverage. A gala planned for October at a country club I'd never been invited to. Company sponsors lined up through my father's business. And every post, every press mention, every graphic, my name wasn't on any of it. It was always the Jordan family's journey. Never mine. Here's something I didn't understand back then, and I wish someone had told me before I signed a single consent form. What a living donor actually gives up isn't just an organ. It's weeks, sometimes months of your life, and very often, your financial stability with it. I've since looked into the real numbers, because I wanted to know if what happened to me was unusual or if it's actually the norm nobody talks about. It's the norm. Research tracking donors nationally found that the vast majority incur real out-of-pocket costs, and more than a third lose meaningful income in the first year after donating, with lost wages alone running into the thousands of dollars for a lot of people. A broader review of thousands of donor cases found something even starker. Roughly 8 out of 10 living donors experience some financial loss from the process, with total costs that can climb into the tens of thousands of dollars. Any right value in Health Journal and the safety net most people assume exists? It barely does. Job protection laws like FMLA only guarantee that your position will still be there when you're ready. They don't guarantee a single dollar of pay while you're gone, and that protection doesn't even apply to everyone. I didn't know any of this going into surgery. I just knew I was about to lose weeks of income, and that my sister was about to raise over $80,000, and none of it was going to touch my bank account. Science direct, I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I wasn't doing this for credit or money or recognition. I was doing it because my father was dying and I could save him. And that part was true. It's still true. But there's a difference between not needing recognition and being actively erased, and I was about to learn exactly where that line was. The night before my surgery, I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through my sister's Instagram photos from her fundraiser planning meetings, captions like, "Doing everything I can for Dad." Something in my stomach twisted tight and didn't let go. At 11 p.m., my father called. "Alice, are you awake?" "Yeah, Dad." "You can still back out. No one will blame you." "I'm not backing out. When you wake up tomorrow, you're going to be in real pain." "And I'll be okay," I said. "Because of you." I took a breath and I asked him for the one thing I actually needed. "Promise me something, Dad. Don't let them erase this. Don't let Mom turn this into something it's not." There was a long pause on the line. "I won't," he said. "I promise." I believed him. I had no idea how hard that promise would be to keep, or how far my mother was willing to go, starting the very next morning, to make sure it didn't come true. Because while I was being wheeled into an operating room at 6:15 a.m., unconscious within the hour, my sister was already on the phone with a reporter, and the story she was building didn't have my name in it at all. I got to the hospital at 5:30 in the morning, in the dark, my stomach empty, because you can't eat before surgery like this. My mother and sister were already in the pre-op waiting area when I arrived. I heard my sister on her phone before she even said good morning to me. "Yes, the surgery's today. I'll post updates." A pause. "No, we're keeping it private for now, but I'll have a statement ready after the fundraiser." She was already planning how to frame the story before I'd even changed into a gown. At 6:15, I was lying on a gurney with an 4 in my arm when they wheeled my father past my bay on his way to his own operating room. We made eye contact. He mouthed, "Thank you." My mother and sister stopped by for maybe 30 seconds. "Good luck," my mother said. "You're so brave," said my sister. Then they left to go wait for him. The anesthesiologist told me to count backward from 10. I made it to 7. I woke up at 2:17 in the afternoon with a pain in my left side I still don't have the right words for. My throat was too raw from the breathing tube to call for a nurse. I lay there alone, listening to machines beep, for 6 hours. A nurse mentioned at one point, almost in passing, "Your father came through surgery. He's in ICU recovery. Your family's with him now." I asked if someone could come sit with me. "They're focused on your dad right now," she said. "I'll let them know you're asking." Nobody came. At 8 p.m., a different nurse, her name was Beth, and I will remember her for the rest of my life, walked in and looked at me for a long moment. "Honey, do you have someone you want me to call? You shouldn't be alone after major surgery." "Oh, my family's here," I told her. "They're just with my dad." Her face changed. "Your mom and sister, they've been in your dad's ICU room since 3 o'clock. They know you're awake, right?" "I think so." "Want me to go get them?" "No, it's okay. He needs them more." Beth looked at me the way you look at someone who has just said something deeply wrong without realizing it. "That's not how this works, sweetie." My mother finally appeared at the foot of my bed at 9:30. "They're moving you to a room," she said. Kenneth stable. Everything went well. How is he? Better than expected. The kidney started working immediately. Dr. Sharma said it's a perfect match. I waited. For a thank you. For anything. Get some rest, she said instead. We'll check on you tomorrow. And she left. No one ever said it. Not that night. Not the next morning. What followed was 2 weeks of bed rest where I couldn't lift more than 5 pounds, couldn't drive, couldn't reach the top shelf of my own kitchen. I slept 16 hours a day. No one offered to help. My mother called once, "How are you managing?" And when I said, "Good," she told me my father's kidney function was at 95% and hung up. By week 2, my boss called to tell me my job didn't have paid medical leave for something this long. I had 8 weeks before I lost my position. By week 3, I was trying to work from home in tower bursts before exhaustion knocked me flat. By week 4, I had a fever of 101.2 and ended up in the ER, another $1,200 I didn't have. I started doing the math I'd been avoiding. 9 weeks of unpaid leave. My deductible. The pre-op testing insurance didn't cover. The ER visit. The prescriptions. It came out to a little over $11,000 against savings that had started at just over $3,000. I was already in overdraft before I was even cleared to drive again. I want to be clear about something, because I didn't understand it myself until I went looking afterward. This isn't just my story. It's the quiet, unspoken cost of being a living donor that almost nobody warns you about going in. Researchers who've actually tracked this found that expanding real financial support for donors, actual lost wage reimbursement, not just sympathy, would be a meaningful step toward making donation something that doesn't financially punish the person generous enough to do it. There are now programs built specifically for this. I'll tell you about the one that actually exists later in this video, because I wish to God someone had told me about it in week 4 instead of week 9. NIH, while I was calculating overdraft fees and rationing pain medication so it would last, my sister's fundraiser was everywhere. Local news. Company LinkedIn posts. Instagram stories building toward an October gala at a country club. I wasn't invited to that either. And I had no idea, none, that the story she was building wasn't really about our father's medical bills at all. It was about something else entirely. Something I wouldn't understand until I read a press release with my sister's name in the headline and mine in none of it. By week 8, I'd mostly stayed off social media. Recovery does that to you. The last thing you want is to watch other people's normal lives scroll past while you can't lift a laundry basket. But in early November, a coworker sent me a link, and I opened it without thinking. It was my sister's Instagram. The fundraiser had happened. 150 guests. A silent auction. My sister holding one of those oversized checks, my mother beside her in an evening gown, my father in a wheelchair, smiling weakly for the camera. The caption read, "Overwhelmed with gratitude. Together we raised $83,200 for kidney disease research." My father's journey inspired this, and I'm honored to lead this initiative. Family is everything. 2,000 likes. The top comment said, "You're amazing, Natalie. What an incredible daughter." I scrolled through 23 photos from that night. I appeared in exactly one of them, blurry in the background. I only recognized myself because of the cardigan I was wearing. I did some digging after that, because something about the whole thing felt wrong in a way I couldn't yet name. I found out the donations were routed through the National Kidney Foundation, matched by my father's company. My father's company got a tax write-off north of $40,000 for it. And when I searched my sister's name, I found an industry profile from a few weeks later, a piece calling her a rising star in the medical supply world, quoting her saying, "In times of family crisis, true leaders emerge." My father was 64. Succession at the company had been an open question for years. I read that quote 5 times before it landed. This fundraiser had never really been about Dad's medical bills. It was her audition to run the company. On November 15th, 9 weeks after my surgery, my doctor finally cleared me for normal activity, with permanent restrictions, lifelong kidney monitoring, and the quiet, permanent fact that I could never donate an organ again to anyone, ever, if they needed one. That same day, my mother texted me, Family dinner Sunday. Post-Thanksgiving to celebrate Kenneth's recovery. 6 p.m., Ashford Hall, cocktail attire. Be there. No thank you. No mention of the donation. Just be there. I went shopping for a dress because I'd lost weight during recovery and nothing fit anymore. I found a navy one for $89, money I genuinely could not spare. It showed 2 inches of my scar when I moved. I almost returned it. Then I thought, let them see what this cost. I kept it. The night before the dinner, I called my father. Dad, is Mom going to mention the donation? Long silence. I can't control what your mother says, but I can control what happens after. Please trust me. Come tomorrow. I arrived at Ashford Hall at 6:08. There was a seating chart. I was position 18 of 22, down at the far end of a table meant for family, seated next to a cousin I'd met once. My father sat at the head, my mother to his right, then my sister, then her husband. I was practically out of sight. At 6:42, my mother tapped a spoon against her glass and stood. 3 months ago, we almost lost Kenneth, she began. Stage 4 kidney failure. It was the scariest moment of our family's life. She let it breathe, the way you do when you've rehearsed a line. But in that darkness, one person stepped up. One person showed extraordinary leadership, compassion, and strength. I already knew where this was going. My whole body did. That person organized a fundraiser that brought our entire community together. She raised $83,000. She held this family together when I was falling apart. My mother raised her glass, turned toward my sister, and smiled. To Natalie, my incredible daughter, the one who saved your father's life. 22 glasses rose. The clink moved down that table like a wave, chair by chair, and it just stopped before it reached me. My glass never left the tablecloth. I couldn't move. I stood up. My chair scraped back loud enough that people turned. I was heading for the door. That's when my father's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was stronger than I expected from a man 9 weeks out of major surgery. His eyes were wet. Without a word, he slid a folded napkin across the table toward me. Read it, he whispered, so only I could hear. Please don't leave yet. I sat back down. I unfolded it in my lap, below the table, out of sight of 21 people still congratulating my sister. The handwriting was his. Shaky but clear. I changed the medical proxy back to you September 16th. Life insurance, $2.3 million. Your sole beneficiary, filed September 18th. The business, 51% voting shares, transferred to you, executed September 20th, filed with the state September 25th. They don't know yet. Attorney Walsh has everything. I'm sorry I waited so long. I see you now. I read it once. Twice. A third time. I looked up at my father. He gave me the smallest nod. I understood, right there at that table, that while I was alone in a recovery bay 9 weeks earlier, while my sister was on the phone planning press coverage, my father had been doing something else entirely. Something none of them knew about yet. I folded the napkin, put it in my purse, and finished dinner like nothing had happened. I had no idea yet how ironclad what he'd done actually was. That would take a meeting in a downtown office 2 days later, with a man named Russell Walsh, 3 folders, and a letter my father had written that I still can't read out loud without stopping halfway through. Monday, November 25th, 8:55 in the morning. Walsh and Associates, 14th floor, downtown Charlotte. I sat across from a man named Russell Walsh, 58, gray hair, the kind of calm, sharp eyes that tell you he's seen a lot of families fall apart in this exact chair. Your father speaks very highly of you, he said. He's never said that to me directly. Walsh almost smiled. He said that too. That he owes you 34 years of words he didn't say. He's trying to make up for it now. He opened the first folder. Durable Power of Attorney for Healthcare. Signed September 16, 2025, at 11:30 a.m., one day after your surgery. Witnessed by your father's ICU attending physician and the hospital social worker. Notarized on site. He slid it across the table. This replaces the previous power of attorney, which named your mother. You now have full authority to make medical decisions for your father if he's ever incapacitated again. Why? He's healthy now. Walsh looked at me evenly. He told me, and I quote, "If I have another health crisis, I don't trust Claire to choose what's best for me. She'll choose what's best for her image. Alice will choose what I would want." He opened the second folder. A life insurance policy, $2.3 million, in place for 18 years with my mother as the sole beneficiary the entire time. Changed September 18th. New beneficiary, Alice Jordan, 100%. This only required your father's signature. He didn't need her permission. He paused. That policy has been in place for 18 years. This will destroy her. That's not my concern, he said, and it wasn't unkind, just honest. My concern is executing your father's wishes. The third folder was the company. My father had owned 68% of the medical supply business he founded in 1998. He'd transferred 51%, majority voting control, to me. Filed with the state, official seal, time-stamped. Your mother owns 25%, non-voting. Your sister owns 7%, non-voting. You can appoint board members. Remove officers. Approve budgets. He let that sit. Including your mother and your sister. I felt the floor tilt a little. They don't know. Not unless they check a public database, no. Your father, as chairman, controls when the board is formally notified of major shareholder changes. He timed this to land right before the December board meeting. Walsh looked at me. He gave them just enough rope. Then he handed me a sealed envelope. He asked me to give you this after you'd seen everything. I read it in that office, and I'm going to tell you the parts one can get through. Alice, I've been a coward for 34 years. Your mother trained me to be. That's what I tell myself. But the truth is I let her. When you were 12, you found a photo of my sister Julie, who died in a car accident in 1982. You look exactly like her. Your mother couldn't look at you without seeing a woman I loved before her, someone I lost. She resented that. So she erased you, and I let her. I told myself I was keeping the peace. I sent you money over the years. $200 here, $500 there. $28,000 over 8 years. It's not enough. It'll never be enough. But it's all I could do without her auditing every account. When I woke up the day after surgery and they told me you'd given me your kidney, I broke. I realized I had spent 34 years choosing my wife over my daughter. I can't undo that. But I can give you the power I should have given you from the start. Fire your mother if you need to. Protect what I built or sell it and be free. I'll support whatever you choose. I just needed you to finally have the power I should have given you a long time ago. I love you. I'm sorry. I sat there and cried in front of a stranger in a suit, and he sat quietly and let me. What do I do now? I finally asked. Walsh closed the folders. That's up to you. But I'll tell you what your father told me. Wait until they show you who they really are. Then act. I thought about the toast. The wave of glasses that stopped before it reached me. They already showed me, I said. He nodded. Then you know what to do. What I didn't know yet, what I wouldn't find out for another 2 weeks, sitting alone at my kitchen table with a thick manila envelope from the hospital's medical records department, was that my father's letter had only told me half the truth about what my mother had done to me while I was on that operating table. There was a second document, one with her own words in it, written down by someone else on a day 3 weeks before my surgery. On December 5th, I called Presbyterian Hospital and requested a complete copy of my own medical records, everything from the day of my surgery through discharge. 3 business days later, I picked up a thick manila envelope and brought it home to my kitchen table. Buried in the middle, stapled together, was something I hadn't asked for and didn't expect, an ethics committee review, dated August 20th, 3.5 weeks before my surgery. There was an incident report from August 18th. Amy Brennan, the social worker who'd interviewed me, had written down a visit from my mother. My mother had gone to her office unannounced and asked, I'm going to say this as close to the actual words as I can, whether there was any way to delay the donation or find another donor, because, in her words, Alice isn't stable enough for this. She has emotional issues. I'm worried she's doing this for attention. She doesn't have the maturity for this kind of decision. The ethics committee interviewed me separately, cleared me completely, and wrote in their notes that my mother's concerns appeared to stem from controlling family dynamics rather than legitimate medical issues. I sat at that table for a long time. My mother hadn't just failed to support me. 3 weeks before I gave my father a piece of my own body, she had gone to a hospital and tried to have me disqualified. I called Amy Brennan the next morning. She confirmed all of it, gently, and told me something that stuck with me. In 15 years doing this work, she said, I've seen families pressure donors to donate. I've never seen a mother try to stop her daughter from saving her father's life. I had everything I needed. The quarterly board meeting was December 16th, 2 p.m., 4th floor. 7 board members. My mother as CFO. My sister as VP of Operations. My father as Chairman Emeritus. And me, majority shareholder, first time in the room, wearing a navy blazer, my hospital bracelet still on my wrist because I'd kept it on purpose, my scar visible above my collar. I walked to the head of the table. My mother was already sitting in the chair I was heading for. I didn't say anything. I just stood there until she moved. Alice, you're not usually at these meetings, she said. I'm the majority shareholder now, I said. I thought I should start attending. I slid the state filing across the table. Board members glanced at each other. One of them, Douglas Carter, looked at my father. Is this true, Kenneth? Yes, my father said. It's legal and final. Before we moved to the agenda, I told them I needed to correct something in the October minutes, the record that credited my sister with organizing the recovery from my father's illness. I laid out the hospital discharge summary, the donor compatibility report, the surgical record. I pulled my collar down slightly so the scar was visible to the whole table. I donated my left kidney to my father on September 15th, I said. I lost 9 weeks of work. I have permanent lifelong medical monitoring. I have $11,000 in out-of-pocket costs. And I have this. I touched the scar. At the family dinner on November 23rd, my mother toasted my sister for saving his life. 22 people raised their glasses. No one said my name. Then I placed the ethics committee report on the table. I also have documentation that my mother attempted to stop my donation 3 weeks before surgery. She told hospital staff I wasn't emotionally stable enough to be trusted with this decision. The ethics committee investigated and cleared me and found her concerns weren't medical. They were about control. The room went silent in a way I'll remember for the rest of my life. My mother's face went white. The company attorney asked her, carefully, if it was true. She didn't answer. I stood. I'm exercising my authority as majority shareholder. Effective immediately, I'm removing Claire Jordan from her position as CFO, pending investigation. I turned to my sister. You have 48 hours to choose between a new role at a reduced salary or a severance conversation. 5 hands went up to approve it. My father abstained. So did one of my mother's longtime allies. The motion carried. Meeting adjourned, I said, and I walked out without looking back. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice break, Kenneth, how could you let her? And my father's voice steady, for what I think was the first time in 34 years, I let her fix what I broke. I want to be honest with you, walking out of that room didn't feel like triumph. It felt like the floor finally being level under my feet for the first time in my life. I didn't know yet how much would fall apart in the weeks that followed, a marriage, a divorce filing, a sister showing up drunk at my door at midnight with something she needed to confess. That's still ahead. But that boardroom is where the story stopped being about what they took from me and started being about what I chose to do with what I had left. The week after the boardroom, everything my family had built on top of me not existing started to come apart on its own. My mother's attorney reviewed the documents my father had signed and called her with the news she didn't want. These are ironclad, he told her. Witnessed, notarized, properly filed. If you contest this, you'll lose and you'll pay legal fees doing it. My advice, don't. She moved out of the family house on December 17th and went to stay with my sister. A few days after that, my sister's husband, Drew, found out from a colleague, not from her, that I was the one who'd actually donated the kidney. He came home and asked her why he'd stood at that dinner and clapped for something that wasn't hers. She didn't have a real answer. That was the beginning of the end of their marriage. On December 23rd, I got a certified letter. My mother was filing for divorce. And then, on December 30th, at 11:14 at night, there was a knock on my apartment door. It was my sister, mascara down her face, a coat thrown over pajamas. She pushed past me and collapsed on my couch, crying. "She made me this way, Alice," she said. "Since I was 6, she told me I was the special one. That I had to be perfect. That you were Dad's mistake." She looked up at me wrecked. "I didn't know she tried to stop your donation." I swear, when I read what she did, I threw up. "My own mother tried to stop you from saving Dad's life. She told me the fundraiser wasn't even her idea. Not really. 2 days after my surgery, our mother had told her, word for word, if Alice gets credit for this, she'll use it against us. We need a counter-narrative." So my sister threw a party and let me disappear. I didn't sit next to her. I sat across from her. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know that doesn't fix anything." "It doesn't," I told her. "But I hear you. And I believe you're sorry. That'll have to be enough for now." Before she left, she asked me the only question that mattered. "Why did you do it?" "Donate, after everything we did to you." "Because he's my dad," I said. "And I loved him, even when he didn't protect me. That doesn't go away just because people hurt you." She left. I closed the door, sat down on my kitchen floor, and cried for the first time since all of this started, not from pain, from relief. By mid-January, I'd hired an outside CEO to run the company, someone with no ties to any of us, and I stepped back into the role of board chair. I kept my part-time job at the nonprofit I'd worked at all along, because I never stopped loving that work, and I finally had enough breathing room to keep it just because I wanted to. I used my new salary to pay off every cent of the $11,000 I'd gone into debt for. And I started something else, a fund at the company that gives real financial support to living donors, the kind of support I never had. The first check I handed out went to a woman named Rachel, 28, who'd lost her job recovering from donating a kidney to her brother. "You did this?" she asked me. "Someone should have done it for me," I told her. "Now we do it for others." I want to say something directly to you here, because this is the part of the story that matters most if you're a donor or you're thinking about becoming one. What happened to me financially wasn't rare. It's the norm nobody warns you about. There's now a real program built specifically for this gap, the National Kidney Registry's Donor Shield program, which reimburses lost wages up to $2,000 a week for up to 12 weeks, with no requirement that your recipient cover any of it themselves. I wish someone had put that in front of me in week 4 instead of me finding it out on my own, months later. If you're a donor or about to become one, look into it before you need it, not after. PubMed. My mother lives in another state now. We have almost no contact. My sister is in therapy twice a week, in a marriage that may or may not survive. We haven't spoken in 3 months, and I don't know if we ever will the way sisters are supposed to. My father is healthy. We have coffee every Sunday, and last week he told me something I'm still sitting with: "You were never invisible to me. I just didn't know how to make you visible to them without losing everything." He chose wrong for 34 years. He chose right in the end. That's something. I'm not sure it's everything, but it's something. The scar is still there. 6 inches, still a little raised, aches when it's cold. I don't hide it anymore. Last week, a young woman came into my office asking for help navigating a living donor process for her own father, because her family, too, thought her sister was the responsible one, even though she was the better match. I rolled up my sleeve and showed her mine. "The surgery's the easy part," I told her. "It's what comes after, making sure the people who are supposed to see you actually do. You deserve to be seen. Don't let anyone take that from you." "What if they don't?" she asked. "What if I do this and they still choose her?" "Then you'll know," I said. "And you'll have the power to choose yourself." I gave him my kidney. She gave him a party. He gave me the company. But what I actually walked away with wasn't the money, or the shares, or even the apology I waited 34 years for. It was this: I finally stopped being invisible in my own life. If somebody in your family made you feel like the invisible one, the one whose sacrifices never counted, the one seated at the far end of the table, I want to hear it. Tell me where you're watching from, and tell me what they did. I read every single comment.